This week, Kyle testified on stand and broke down into tears. Some are saying these were crocodile tears, some are saying they weren't. What is your read on the case so far?
Yeah, I'm going to go completely opposite. I do believe that guns are a big culture in America, but I feel like when he rose his gun to shoot the first person, which was actually Joseph, he could have at least waited a couple of seconds to see what his reaction was. He just kind of went and shot off 4 rounds. Whether his crying was real or not, I'm not totally convinced, but I'm not him, so I don't know. I'm just not convinced that it was self-defense.
Mr. Destiny.
Whether or not Kyle had a right to be there, I don't even think that's a material in the trial anymore. I think the curfew thing was tossed out as not being legally enforced. Whether or not he had a right to be there morally, I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do know that he had just as much a right to be there as any of the protesters did. So if you think that any of them had a right to be there, then he absolutely had a right to be there. Maybe even more so than any of the protesters there. So I think we've seen all the progress of the trial now. There hasn't been any new footage. It seems to be exactly as it appeared to be a year ago. It was pretty obviously self-defense. And then in terms of the whole crying or fake crying thing, I'm really glad that he cried on the when he was giving testimony, because I can see how many like fake lefties that pretend to care about or understand anything about like panic attacks or trauma or any of that stuff have come out of the woodwork. You've got people that will like have breakdowns and cry because people said mean stuff to them on Twitter, but somehow can't believe that a 17-year-old is having a breakdown after killing 2 people. That is actually hilariously, phenomenally stupid to me. But yeah, that's where I'm at on that.
I'm convinced that anyone who thinks it wasn't justified self-defense is ignorant of a lot of the facts. So can I ask the progressive brat to just like take us through the events chronologically? I can do it if you want. Like,
well, why don't you do it? You do it. You go ahead and do it yourself.
Well, so I don't think they know. I just want to see if they know, or like ask them if they.
Yeah, I don't have to prove myself to you based off of my thoughts. I'm a progressive. That's how I think. If you want to go over the events chronologically, Joseph was not armed, and he was actually released from the hospital for trying to attempt suicide that same day that he was shot. So I'm not going to have you as a man try to question my intelligence on this case. We're not about to do that. So if you want to go over the steps, you can. For sure. But I said my opinion. So I don't know why you only pointed me out of everyone else in this panel. It's kind of interesting that you did that. But I'm going to let you do that because I'm not going to answer that.
Just as a super quick thing, and then I'll shut up. We are all here to justify our thoughts. That's why we're on a panel. You don't go to a panel to talk about politics. Say, I'm not going to explain myself to you. Then why are you on the panel? Of course, that's what we're here for.
Well, no, I think it's like, I don't know.
Because he pointed me out specifically, like.
Well, probably because you gave the least fact-based take about the event, so it's not surprising that you did, right?
Can I just lower the heat here? I think what she's trying to say is this: I'm a progressive, so I don't care about facts, and you, you're a man.
When did I sum that up?
Just to be clear, when you talk about Rosenbaum was unarmed, I agree he was just released like with mental issues. Did you see a video of him antagonizing the crowd and being very aggressive people and saying shoot me, shoot me,
I saw the prosecution. I saw him speak on both sides. Okay, he was unarmed. Joseph was unarmed. So I feel like it's justified to pull the gun or the AR-15 and kind of see like, okay, is he going to continue running towards me or not? Because he did not have any lethal weapons on him at that point. That's my only take. That's all I'm saying.
Can I ask one question? Do you think it would change? Would it change your mind if Rosenbaum had gotten close enough to grab his gun? Would that have changed your mind on that?
I think we could talk about that, but he didn't. So
I rest my entire case. I don't know what to say.
Both you and Dr. Red Pill mentioned this. The idea that you're some sort of centrist who looked at the facts. You called it the day it fucking happened. We all heard your fucking bullshit at the time. You called it straight away. You didn't give a
I won't take credit for that. But if I were to take credit for that, I was exactly 100% right completely.
No,
I absolutely was in every single part. So number one. But number two, I actually said multiple times while covering it, there might be footage that could be released of Kyle Rittenhouse that shows him acting in a highly provocative manner right before the camera starts rolling. Now, it seems unlikely given what we've seen, but it's possible. I said that on the day of the case as well. Unlike you progressives, I don't sit here and try to fucking say exactly what happened on every single case the second that it fucking comes out. Which, by the way,
yeah, Destiny, you don't know me, so that's what we're not about to do. You don't know me.
No,
this is the first time you've seen me.
This is exactly wait, to be clear, this is like one of the most obvious cases of all time. So was the Jacob Blake one, which by the way is what led to the Kenosha riots, where that guy got shot by the cops in an entirely reasonable manner, and he should have been. It was absolutely 100% reasonable. And the misinformation surrounding that shooting is what led then to 2 more people dying and 1 other person being shot by Kyle Rittenhouse 2 days days later. And we're repeating it again. You guys are just going to run through the same hamster loop of lying about the facts of the matter and then trying to come to absurd conclusions that are not reality based, and then getting mad at people when they get upset because people are saying, oh, the left-wing media or mainstream media is lying about shit. Why do you keep doing this? Learn the facts.
Well, can I just point out, I think it's really interesting that you're going to blame other people for inciting violence when we all know your most famous clip.
First of all,
you literally doing that.
Yeah, do you understand that you've pivoted 3 times to just try to character assassinate without responding to anything I'm saying, right? It's funny that like we can start a sentence.
I don't give a what you have to say, but we all know you're on his that's fine.
Wait, first of all, I'm not on anybody's number 1. Number 2, if you don't care what I have to say, then why are you on a political panel? Okay? And then number 3, if you don't care what I have to say, why are you responding to me? And why do you keep bringing up the like, isn't it interesting, this unrelated fact that I could use to try to attack you with? If you want to attack any of my statements, I'll defend any statement I've made. I'm just saying that it's really upsetting that about this particular case where there is an unprecedented amount of video footage available, everybody has proven to the world that the amount of information available doesn't matter because people will pick and choose and watch what they want. When the facts of the case can be laid out so cleanly with this, that it was pretty obviously self-defense. So the progressive brat, you didn't seem aware of this, but Rosenbaum grabbed Kyle's fucking rifle before Kyle shot. Yep. There wasn't another second that he could wait on it. Okay, there wasn't more time that he could have waited to shoot at him, right?
He literally admitted in the trial that Rosenbaum hadn't touched him.
His rifle. He touched his rifle. He had his hand on the...
Also, are we just going to ignore the fact that Joseph was literally there and he lied about being an EMT? He lied about being actively in nursing school. He was asking people if they needed first aid help while he was holding the AR-15.
Literally none of those facts would deprive him of his right to self-defense.
What is it that you want? You don't want the police involved. You don't want the National Guard involved. You don't want the people to defend their own property. So, like, I'd ask Progressive Brett and Kevin Logan, what should have happened? The people of Kenosha should just say, well, we don't have the right to do anything, so just leave our town burn until the Democrats feel that it's...
Yeah, a 17-year-old vigilante with an AR-15. Okay, if that's who you want to defend your property, I guess that's on you, because that's not really what I would want.
What they would ideally want is the police to defend it. But we have now where everybody's saying the police is an institution of white nationalism, white supremacy, right? So if people don't want cops showing up and doing whatever they can to get rid of crowds like this, which I don't imagine any of us do, then obviously people are going to take up their legal right to bear arms and defend their communities. Like that's what you should expect. That's the next step. People aren't just going to lay down and watch their entire cities burn for no reason.
There were cops there.
No, hold on. Okay, hold on, wait. To be clear, okay, we just had a conversation, okay, about how in a pre-planned event, okay, cops couldn't even control people from dying in a fucking mosh pit at a concert. Why do we think that police officers are going to be able to stop an entire like protest going on in a city? This is Kenosha. What is this population, like 100,000 or less? Like this is a small town. Unless you literally calling in the National Guard in advance, you're never going to have the personnel required to stop these types of protests. That's why you let them burn themselves out. You just kind of direct people around until they get tired and go home.
I was saying, you're going to see vigilante justice. That's the next step. When we see the people that control the narrative that are making excuses for this rioting, which is causing the police, the people in charge of the police, to tell them to stand down, inevitably people are going to say, we have to take it upon her. I think we're lucky we only saw one Rittenhouse. We're going to start to see more of it if riots continue to be praised.
No, Rob, we're going to start to see more of it because the right wing have taken him and made and sort of pre-mortem beatified him.
The reason why the right wing was able to make him such a hero is because the left wing was so fucking desperate to turn him into a villain. You motherfuckers
always the left, man. You're so brain poisoned. It's always the left.
Dude, your video title of me literally call me a fascist. You guys are actually delusional. We should hold ourselves to a higher standards, and we should probably report accurately on the facts of the matter. And if you're going to spend all of your time calling somebody a white nationalist, a white supremacist or a neo-Nazi or a KKK or whatever people were saying Rittenhouse was, which by the way, there has still been absolutely zero evidence presented for that anybody at that.
He definitely had white supremacist signs. He definitely threw up white.
Show me an example.
Okay,
stop. It was at a bar. It was everywhere. What are you talking about?
We've all seen the TikTok videos. Thank you. Okay, stop. Okay, so there has been no evidence presented of that, right? When you're going to go ahead and throw these terms around, and then afterwards,
what
you're going to be like,
are you looking for?
What? There is no evidence. The evidence is that
he was. Wait, sorry, can I ask?
He was seen chanting the Proud Boys song.
I have to ask, Destiny. So you're saying that under no situation, if someone does the OK sign, is that you don't count that
as making you a white supremacist? No, and you're incredibly stupid if you say so. It's such a
okay. What about singing the Proud Boys national anthem? What about singing the Proud Boys song?
I don't know the national Proud Boys have a national anthem, but no, him singing that, especially after the fact, doesn't change anything. That was after the shootings that the Proud Boys stuff came out.
So now you're just completely dismissing that he totally did that, and it's literally multiple sources have covered it.
No. There was,
or is that just the media?
There was one thing where yes, he was friendly with some Proud Boys after the shooting. But that doesn't mean that he was a white supremacist or white nationalist before the shooting. And
so you're just friendly with Proud Boys just to be friendly with Proud Boys.
When the entire left part of the country is shitting on you and you're 17, yeah,
I'm not really talking about the left. Destiny, let the left go. I'm talking about what he did, what Kyle did at that bar.
Let's try to use more than 10% of our brain for this conversation, okay? If the entire
now you're gonna resort to.
Please don't name call, okay?
I wasn't. I was being nice.
You said use more than 10%.
Yeah, because I'm assuming she's not really this dumb. She must just not be using all of her brain. That was a compliment.
Are you fucking
in any situation, if you have one entire group that's shitting on a person, it's really not that uncommon that you see that person gravitate towards another group.
He was literally seen at the bar giving up the sign and singing the Proud Boys song. Come on, but it's the media. But it's the media. I'm sorry, it's the media that covered it. That's the issue.
I saw it.
Rob.
There's like a couple of bad apples in the police a little bit. Destiny, is that right? For kind of like what you said?
Conservatives saying that like police don't act incorrect or whatever. I don't even know if that's their position, to be honest. But like the idea that the institution of the police is fine and there is no reform necessary, blah, 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 that's ridiculous. However, the left continuously finding these stories that they dramatically misrepresent, or this overall narrative that like if you're a black person in the United States, cops are just indiscriminately driving around like mowing you down in the street. That's absurd. And I think that type of environment puts everybody in an unhealthy world where we're protesting issues that aren't actually existing, where we're calling for changes that don't actually help,
we're
like all the defund
issues that aren't actually existing.
Is there like a 10-second echo in here?
Well, Destiny, can you elaborate? What issues do you think are being protested?
So, like, it seems to be the case, based on what I've seen, that there does exist some level of discrimination in our system against certain minorities, especially socioeconomically. However, this narrative that cops are running around indiscriminately killing black people, or that they're just constantly bloodthirsty looking, or every single outcome of a trial that we don't like is a result of white supremacy and blah, 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 that's like way too not even close to reality. It's absurd. And then it leads to people... It leads to this cringe situations where people are, I'm sorry, and the case was horrible, and I'm glad that Shawn got in trouble, but George Floyd wasn't a fucking hero. This is not somebody to be revered or fucking worshipped or whatever, right? And then people like Jacob Blake aren't like victims of the system, and cops aren't always doing these horrible things, right? We like totally lose sight of like any realistic conversation.
He is a victim of the system. He's literally paralyzed.
After he tried to drive off with his ex-girlfriend who he'd fucking raped, drive off with her rental car and her fucking kids. He got shot. Yes.
Kids were in the car.
So there's no personal responsibility. The left were mean to him, so he had to become a white supremacist, obviously.
He never became a white supremist.
Naturally.
Wait,
There's
where's
no evidence.
Okay, hang on. I want to hear from Shark.
Apart from him taking pictures with Proud Boys and
that makes you a white supremacist?
He supported Blue Lives Matter.
Blue Lives Matter.
Which suggests he's not on the left.
Then we'll hop to the next thing. Do you think that if you're supporting Blue Lives Matter, does that make you a white supremacist?
No, not necessarily, but I'm making reasonable inferences that that's the side of things he's on.
You're reasonable. Okay.
Did you guys see the video that was released on AP where he was literally across the street and he was like, "Oh, I wish I had my gun so I could shoot the shoplifters," when he was literally across the and the shoplifters
and there's
were
a
nowhere
reason,
near him.
and there's a reason why that wasn't allowed to be admitted as evidence, because it's not really relevant to this particular circumstance.
But it's relevant to his personality and who he is.
It's relevant to his personality when he sees people shoplift. I say that I wish I could, in a video game, people that leave their carts out in the parking lot, right? I don't want a video like that.
But this is real life. We're not talking about a video game.
Hang on, sorry. So we're talking about two different things here, right? So one, we're talking about whether or not there's some sort of clues or something that he was a white supremacist. You're saying that that thing was not admissible in court. We're not arguing whether or not it was.
No, right? It's not about it being admissible in court. The conversation is over what the fuck does it mean to be racist or a white supremacist or a white nationalist. And you guys have broadened the umbrella to these words that would include like fucking 85% of the American population.
Yep.
When you're on some like, if you support Blue Lives Matter or Within Blue Line, you're a fucking white supremacist. What bull fucking shit. That's delusional.
I just want to, again, I will just bring up that the right wingers spent the last week calling Big Bird a communist.
Wow.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, started by Ted Cruz, by the way.
Wait, hold on, I think my shit is glitching. Hold on. Kevin keeps responding to somebody. I have no fucking idea who he's talking to. Am I missing somebody in the call? Who in here was defending conservatives calling Big Bird a fucking communist? I can't hear the mic. I don't know who's saying something.
Answer my question as well. If that picture at the bar with the OK sign came out from before, would you change your mind, Destiny?
Maybe, but maybe not.
Okay,
that's
go
not
ahead.
enough.
You can answer Shark's question.
Here's my issue, okay? So the reason why we identify any problem ever is so that we can have a solution. That's the whole point of analyzing problems. We don't just look at things and say this is bad because it's bad and then we leave it. We try to, so if you're a doctor, you try to diagnose a disease, and the reason why we diagnose a disease is to find therapeutic treatments for it. That's the whole point. This is why we find problems. So if I look at a whole bunch of militiamen showing up to a city, and my analysis is, I think these guys are all racist because they're here opposing BLM. Well, how do we fix that problem, right? Well, we're going to have to talk about, like, how do we make people less racist? How do we, like, get people to have better views of BLM? Like, these are the situations, these are the problems that we're going to be trying to solve, okay? But if we back up and we go, okay, well, hold on. We say that there's a bunch of militia-like people showing up to a town, and the reason why they're doing it is probably because, like, their city has been burned down over and over again, or there's a lot of rioting going on, and that's probably why they're there. Our solution to that problem is going to look a lot different, right? Maybe it'll be like, well, we need to have stricter curfews, or we need to have more policemen, or we need to have the National Guard. Now, I believe that it's more likely the latter than the former reason, that they're probably there to protect their communities rather than they're there because they hate black people. So my solutions, I believe, are going to be more realistic when it comes to trying to get rid of this type of violence or prevent this type of violence in the future. If your analysis of this problem is just that, wow, there's a whole bunch of racist people and that's why they're showing up, you're going to be having a fantasy conversation about trying to fix these problems because you don't even know what the problem is. That's my problem. Wait, hold on. If we talk about, hold on, let's be honest. In terms of, like, killings or whatever, like right-wing versus left-wing violence, it seems to me to be the case that it's obviously right-wing. But if we talk about, like, overall, like, damage done, if you're looking at, like, 2020, 2021, well, 2020, like, all the riots and everything, that was overwhelmingly left-leaning, of course. That's
well,
like,
yeah, no, and talk about the riots, but I don't
also recognize that was in response to George Floyd. That was in a very special circumstance. And also, there were 3 people that created Black Lives Matter.
To a minimum, okay? But yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of the overall damage done, yeah, I mean, it was the left largely that was rioting and all the rest of it. But I'm far less concerned with a Wendy's burning down than with, like, peaceful synagogue attendees being slaughtered.
Okay, wait, why do we, hold on. Okay, you just did it. It's actually so fucking disgusting, okay? If you want, go look, like, this is like saying, like, who the cared about what happened in Syria, so a couple of Walmarts got blown up, right? Like, dude, some of these blocks were, like, absolutely fucking totaled. Even in just Kenosha, this small city, I think that the property damage got up to, like, $50 million just for that small city, right? We're not just talking about one Wendy's burning down. We're talking about tons of businesses, some chains, some local
well, I was trying to be poetic about it, but
you're not
my point is property damage is less important than human life.
First of all, that's not
the general point I'm making.
To some people, property is their life, okay? So stop with the dumb fucking arguments, okay? Number one. Number two, you are trying to be poetic.
No, property isn't their life, Destiny. That's just not fucking true. They may find it very, very important and a cornerstone of what they think they are, what they've built around themselves. But if they're still alive, they can rebuild that.
If you don't have if you own a business and that's how you provide for your family, that property may as well be your life, okay? Now, for those of us here with wealthy parents who live in gated suburban communities, maybe you don't understand that perspective, but there's a reason why when you see these riots happen, there are people crying out in the street saying, this is my business, why are you doing this? Like, please stop or whatever, right? And
well, I do hope you're not impugning me as being from a gated community, because I'm not surely not. I know I've got a British accent, but we're not all rich.
Sure, you just give a very white gated community perspective, but maybe you got that way all on your own, okay? So the problem is that, like,
you're the one going on about if only 50 people,
Jesus
if only
Christ.
50 people get killed, that's fine, because you're not the one that's going to get killed. You're the white rich man.
Okay, so I'm just saying that, like, people keep trying to frame this as like, oh, it was only I don't care about a Wendy's burning down. It wasn't just a Wendy's burning down. And if anything, you should care about this stuff burning down because that's what's causing people to take up arms and go out on the street and fucking march around being anti or counter protesters. So you probably should be somewhat concerned about it. Also, this idea that the BLM, the rioting was in response to the George Floyd stuff, just because something happened that was horrible doesn't give you the excuse to go and burn down a ton of private businesses. Okay, so that is not a valid response.
So you prefer businesses over human lives? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he genuinely does.
I prefer people to not burn down private property. Yes.
You're pivoting my question. Hold on. Can you give me 1 second? I just want to talk to Destiny really quick. You're pivoting my question. So you prefer to lose human lives over losing a couple of buildings, which, by the way, most of the time are insured, get rebuilt almost literally the day after. So you prefer to protect those buildings rather than the human lives that are being lost. Which, by the way, George Floyd was murdered. He was literally choked for 9 minutes.
9 minutes. Wow. So have you ever filed an insurance claim without the help of your mom or dad before? What is this argument of like, oh, well, there's an insurance. It's easy to get back. Insurance is a huge fucking hassle to get paid out sometimes. And there was that as much was said by a lot of the people that own these businesses in Minneapolis. Not all of them were covered for the types of damages.
Not answering my question.
What?
Answer
You
for.
just
First
ranted
off-
for 5 fucking minutes about a relevant
Do you prefer human lives over a building and insurance claims?
It depends on who
Listen.
it depends on who the aggressor is. That's going to be the answer every single time.
Oh, so it depends.
It
Okay,
depends.
but
Yeah, hold on.
That's all I need to know.
I
That's
don't
all
know.
I need to know.
Either my mic
That's
is
literally
cutting
all I
out.
need to
Either my
know.
mic is cutting out, or your ears are not working. So let me say this one more time. If you
Okay.
if you are running down to burn somebody else's shit down, or destroy their business, or destroy their property, then yeah, in the United States, it
Oh
seems
my
like you
God.
probably have some right to defend that stuff. Do you think
Yeah.
people should be able to indiscriminately burn down businesses?
Definitely worth losing a
Wait, one
life
sec.
over.
Wait,
Well, hey,
Ariana,
the people
hold on,
making
hold
the
on, hold
decision.
on.
Wait, no, wait. Hold on. I'm gonna go to this line of questioning. Who's making the decision to lose their life?